Welcome everyone to the English panel. My name is Evelyn Regan. I'm a senior admissions counselor at Rochester, and I'm also a U of R alum. Today we have some wonderful people from the English department who will be able to provide you with a bit more detailed insight into what it's like to take English courses of all different varieties at Rochester. So, Jeffrey, if you wouldn't mind starting off.
Sure. So my name's Jeff Tucker. I'm an associate professor in the Department of English, and I'm also the director of undergraduate studies in the English department.
And I'm Catherine Mannheimer, and I'm chair of the English department. I'm also an associate professor, and I teach and research the long 18th century, literature of the long 18th century.
And we do have another panelist who will be joining us at some point in time. His name is Nigel, and he is the director of our international theater program. So we'll have some more insight from him later on. But for now, just a note, you can feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box, but if we do have a quieter audience this afternoon, I have some questions that I know many prospective students find important when they're researching the different colleges and academic programs that they're interested in. So with that being said, I'll start off with some of my questions. First, what are classes like in the English department?
So what are classes like? Well, first, let me just say in terms of the curriculum that the English department offers, I mean, we offer courses in a variety of periods and genres in literature, in English. That includes British literature, American literature, Anglophone literature, and all sorts of genres like poetry, fiction, nonfiction, creative writing, as well as like media studies, journalism types courses. In terms of what the courses are like what an individual class is like, I mean, I think, classes tend to be either lectures or discussion or some combination. The ratio between lecture and discussion can change or can vary according to the subject matter, according to enrollment, and according to whether it's an introductory course or an upper level course. A lot of the introductory courses that I teach with larger enrollments tend to be more lecture-y, whereas upper level courses tend to be more discussion based. So that's just my experience. But discussion really matters a lot. And then there's a lot of reading, most certainly. We do a lot of reading in our courses. Katie, if you want to add.
Yeah. So I would also just kind of start out by emphasizing what I think are the 4 tracks in English. So, if you are an English major, that you can major in theater, you can major in literature, which is what we think of as maybe the most traditional kind of English major. You can major in language, media, and communication, which involves media studies, journalism, film studies, and so on. And then you can major in creative writing. So those are how we think of the different focuses within English. And, your coursework would look different in theater than it would in creative writing, say, but you'd be taking some overlapping courses. And yeah, I would just echo what Jeff is saying about class size. I would say it's fairly unusual for a course to be over 25 students. Even our introductory courses would tend to be maybe 25, 30. The exception would be media studies and film studies. Those intro courses are larger. But yeah, in general, they are more discussion based, a lot of, interaction with the faculty person teaching it. And then, in general, I would say faculty tend to be very available then to their students as well in terms of office hours and, meeting to discuss assignments and papers and, or even just the readings, outside of the class setting.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight. So, beyond that, I know many students who come to the University of Rochester are very interested in multiple fields of study. So, how do English courses connect with courses in STEM and other fields?
Well, certainly, I think, we have a long history of students doing a major or minor in English and major or minoring in some other field, in some other disciplinary division. So, I've seen students like double major in English and psychology, for example, or English and biology, for example. So that's not unusual at all. That happens with some degree of frequency. Um, I would also say that the English department, both in terms of faculty research, but also in terms of what students concentrate in, is very connected to interdisciplinary programs on campus, like the Frederick Douglass Institute for African and African American Studies. A lot of the courses that I teach are cross-listed as African and African American Studies courses. The Susan B. Anthony Institute for Gender and Women's Studies. Also, the Film and Media Studies program is very close and is an important part of what we do in the English department. We have very close ties to that. And that's just for starters. So I think that's one of the strengths of our department and one of the strengths of the university, or the College of Art Sciences and Engineering, which is to say, I think interdisciplinarity is valued, throughout the college, from students to faculty, even to the administration. It's something that matters at the U of R and the college. In terms of STEM, I don't know if it's something I've thought about a whole heck of a lot, but certainly, like I say, I think I've certainly taught a number of students who've double majored or majored in minor in English and in a natural science field. And I guess the one thing I would say also, in addition to that, and this is just my personal philosophical bent when it comes to the study of literature, but I think the study of literature, among other things, teaches students how to think critically, how to ask analytical questions about information that they encounter. And that's an important skill in any discipline. And it's an important skill to have simply as an informed citizen of your local, national, or global community. I think that's a very important thing that we do in the English department.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, I think that the skills that you are acquiring as an English major or minor do, this is also my bias, but tend to, enrich then your training and work as a physician, as an engineer, as a computer programmer, whatever it is, to be alert to cultural nuance and nuances of language, just to, questions of ethics and aesthetics and all of the different things we think about when we study novels or plays, or poems, that an awareness of those questions makes you a better scientist, a better researcher. Um, so, yeah.
Awesome, thanks. And for the folks who might have just joined us, please type your questions in the Q&A box. Our priority is answering any and all questions that you might have about English at the University of Rochester. So please do type in your questions, they're very important. But we'll continue on with some other questions, like what resources does your department offer to students?
So when you say resources, are you talking about like informational research resources or
Basically, any sort of support that your department might provide to students, whether it's advising or
oh,
research or anything of that variety.
well, certainly, I guess I can comment on advising since I'm the director of undergraduate studies, which is to say that I'm the point person for majors and minors in English in terms of the person that they can touch base with to make sure that they're satisfying the requirements for concentrations in English majors and minors. And I guess I should also say that I'm the person who gets in touch with students if there's an issue along those lines. But I would also say, just to kind of return to something that Katie said, which is to say, I think, our department is, I mean, there's a kind of close-knit quality to the department, not only the faculty, but I think, we have that kind of relationship with our students. And so that, and again, the pandemic has thrown everything into disarray, but I mean, we're a department that, works closely with our students, and we make ourselves available to the students. So I'm not the, so all of us in the English department, sort of keep track of how our students are doing. We like to keep our door open, our respective doors open to students so that they can come and talk to us, ask us questions about the material that we're teaching, about the research that we're doing, about their satisfying the requirements of concentrations in English. So, and I would also say, I think we have an excellent office staff. The people who work and again, the pandemic, with the pandemic, they're not on campus a lot this year, but I mean, they're very good. They work very well. I found working with them very easy and very helpful. And I've observed that they're also very friendly and helpful with undergraduate students who come or contact them with questions about, again, about the major, about something that's happening within the English department. So, so those are two things that come to mind in response to that question. Katie.
I'm also trying to channel Nigel Meister here and think about theater too. So I guess, resources, I'm defining resources broadly here, but, I think one, additional resource for students is our theater program. I mean, maybe that's, a silly way of putting it, but, our theater program, in contrast to, I think, most university, college, theater programs around the country, allows students to be involved kind of at every level of the production, in the costume shop, as an assistant director, in stage design and construction, in lighting design and operation, as well as acting. And it's a relatively small program. You would work one-on-one with both Nigel Meister, the artistic director, and every year he brings in a visiting artist, often from New York City, often from elsewhere, even internationally, to direct a production, again, working very closely with students. So I think that's a really marvelous opportunity that is almost unique to the U of R. We have a theater in London program that I lead each year, not in a pandemic year, where we see over 20 plays in 11 days in London, and discuss them and write about them. Every year we lead a trip to Stratford, Ontario, which is a few hours drive away, to the Shakespeare Festival there. And so that's, it's not for credit. My theater in London course is actually a for credit course. The Stratford trip is simply a way for students to see great Shakespeare and other productions together. with other U of R students and faculty. There are a lot of opportunities because of the kind of intimate size of our department for independent studies to do research on a topic of your choice. We have, I mean, this is not within the English department, but the library has many resources as well in terms of rare books and manuscripts and materials that the librarians are very happy to make available to undergraduates to do their own independent research or internships. Our internships program is another resource that is available to students and places them directly in news organizations, in arts nonprofits, and other organizations around town. That is a great opportunity for our students.
Yeah, all of that is really great. Let me also add that, again, usually we have the undergraduate students have the Undergraduate English Council, which is an organization of undergraduate English majors and minors, and also just students who are interested in English and literature. So that's an organization that is sort of, somewhat independent of the English department, but within the English department. And there are also, numerous opportunities for students to share creative work. There's actually on-campus journal entitled Logos that has been publishing annually or sometimes twice a year. And students publish creative work, prose, fiction, poetry, and artwork in that on-campus magazine, which is really great. So, so those are some other things that students do related to the study of English.
That kind of reminds me of another related club or organization called the Campus Times that many students who do enjoy taking English courses take advantage of as well. But beyond that, what type of programming is available to students through your department? So what kind of events do you have during a non-pandemic year and like now as well?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the Plutzig reading series, right? Which is, an amazing series that the department has been doing for I don't know how long. It's been going on for many years now, and it brings contemporary creative writers to campus, and we usually have 3 or 4 readings a semester, usually at least 3. And again, in a non-pandemic year, we'd be having again, contemporary writers, poets, fiction writers, and we've had a number of really excellent, high quality contemporary writers come and give readings. And as I was saying I think I was saying, I may have said this, I was saying this to students maybe even last week, that there's something special about, I mean, when you read literature to yourself, that's a kind of literary experience, but there's something special when you hear a poet or a fiction writer read from their own work aloud, and that's another type of very special experience. And we're fortunate to have that's something that we do regularly throughout the academic year. So definitely the Plutzig series is a special aspect of life in the English department here at the University of Rochester.
Yeah, and I would just add that those writers will often visit classes as well, and get to interact with students directly in that way. And yeah, I mean, we've had Nobel Prize winners, we've had National Book Award winners, both poets and novelists. and it's, you know, we have a very good track record with the Plutzik series. And I think it's been going on for over 50 years. And we believe it is the longest running university reading series, or maybe even the longest reading series that's been continuously ongoing in the country. And then, you know, the university at large, there's a Humanities Center, which is, you know, separate from the English department, but kind of a clearinghouse for everything humanities related going on at the university. And I mean, it would be difficult to name all of the different events that go on through the Humanities Center. Scholars, both at the university and from other universities visiting, will share their kind of ongoing scholarship with the community at large. It's often a luncheon or an afternoon talk that anyone is invited to attend. Each year we have a distinguished visiting humanist who is someone, you know, usually someone world-renowned who will come for a number of days to talk about their work, meet with students. Often they will have a dedicated session with undergraduates, you know, as well as graduate students. And then, you know, all of the departments are continuously bringing people through. And again, it's, you know, you might be an English major, but it would be interesting to attend a talk by a historian, right? Or a musicologist or an anthropologist. And pretty much any day of the week, normally, you can go to the Humanities Center to engage with one of those visitors.
Yeah, just, I mean, last year, my colleague Joel Burgess and I organized a visit from Professor Hazel Carby at Yale University. She was our distinguished visiting humanist in the spring semester of 2019. And we organized a number of events around her visit in terms of, you know, lectures, a lecture she gave, a reading she gave, an interview, visits that she had with undergraduate students and faculty and administrators as well. And it was just a really special few days. We actually also had a session in rare books and special collections on archival research. All of these events were open to the entirety of the university community, including undergraduate students, as well as open to the greater Rochester community. We had great attendance from folks off campus as well, which is, I think, an important aspect of this type of programming, which is to say, to make it available to the entirety of the university and local community. So yeah, the Distinguished Visiting Humanist event is something that the Humanities Center does that is really super special, I think.
Okay, we do have a question coming in from one of our attendees. They ask, while it is not about the English department itself, I think it could still reveal something about the department culture. What are your favorite books and authors?
Contemporary or of all time?
There's no specification here at the moment.
That's always a tough question for an English professor, because I imagine we could just talk for the rest of our time about stuff that we like and stuff that has had an impact on us. But I'll try to keep my list short. I mean, the list of works that have had an impact on me and my study of literature, my teaching of literature, include things like Henry James, The Ambassadors, and The Portrait of a Lady, also by James. William Faulkner's Absalom. These are all novels. Something that's not a novel that has a huge impact on me was W.B. Du Bois's The Souls of Black Folk, Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, Toni Morrison's Beloved. But I just finished teaching what I think is one of my all-time favorite novels, and it's Colson Whitehead's The Intuitionist, which was published in 1999. And I think, you know, if you talk to to some of my colleagues who were who were around on campus back then. That was like my first year at the University of Rochester, and I was so amazed and impressed, and I enjoyed that novel so much. I was just telling everyone in the English department, all of my colleagues, all of my students, you have to read this novel. It is so good. It is so great. And and I think people will still talk about, like, what was Professor Tucker doing back then? He was just like, accosting everyone that he saw. But it is a great novel. It's about elevators, but it's not only about elevators. It says some very profound things about the history of race and racism in America. And it's a mystery, and it's hugely entertaining. So Colson Whitehead, The Intuitionist, I recommend it highly. That's a novel, by the way.
I haven't read that one. I've read other Colson Whitehead,
Yeah.
the Underground
Yeah.
Railroad
Sure.
and
Yeah.
Sag Harbor, but I haven't read that one. So I guess I wasn't there to be accosted.
Yeah, I think that was before
1969,
you were there. Yeah, I was like totally shameless about my enthusiasm for that novel. It was ridiculous, but
oh gosh. Okay, let's see. I was so interested in what Jeff was saying that I wasn't thinking about what I was going to say. I teach Jane Austen, and she's definitely a favorite author. I haven't taught her in a while, and I'm teaching my Austen course again in the spring, so I'm very much looking forward to that. Let's see. I also, I don't know, I love 18th century poetry. I love the Augustines. I often teach a satire course, and Pope and Swift, they always make me laugh, and continue to be very relevant today in their critique of power structures and cultural tendencies in human nature. And then I guess a book that I read recently that I found really thought-provoking was Rodham by Curtis Sittenfeld. She also is the author of, I think I've read almost all her novels. Oh gosh, there's one that I'm not remembering the name of that's like a kind of intertextually related with an Austen novel, I think Pride and Prejudice. And then Prep was her debut novel about a prep school, East Coast prep school. But anyway, Rodham is like an alternative history of Hillary Clinton if she hadn't married Bill Clinton, and what would have happened both to her and to him, which I found really interesting, is like, to what extent was his success intertwined with her drive and talents, or even dependent on that, and her sophistication and savvy. And if he hadn't had her, could he have become president? And just given that we, just had an election, and we have our first female vice president elect. I just, it was so well done. And I thought one of the things that I found so fascinating about it was I felt like, not that I know Hillary Rodham or Bill Clinton personally, but just, they are public figures and everyone knows so much about them. And she was writing about their private thoughts and lives in ways, that very few people would actually have been privy to, but it was so convincing. Like, what I do know of them from everything that I've read over the years was completely congruent with what she had imagined their most intimate selves to be like and to talk like. So I thought it was just an amazing accomplishment, and it was just so, it thought so well. Better than the nonfiction essays that I had read around, the 2016 election, just about the role of sexism and the role of gender in politics and in public office, and and how that, just with the presidency that is now ending, how that continued to overhang these 4 years after Hillary Clinton was not elected. Anyway, so I recommend that.
Well, now I have plenty of books to add to my reading list, to say the least. We do have a few more questions from our attendees at the moment. What is an English course specific to the University of Rochester, or what's your favorite English course to teach?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one that's specific to the U of R.
Next semester we do have our colleague Rosemary Cagle is teaching a course entitled Rochester, New York, that is sort of focused on kind of like the cultural and historical idiosyncrasies of the area. And I think it's a brand new course. Is that right, Katie?
I think it's a revived
Okay.
a version of a course that she taught years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, I was thinking of that one too. It's obviously geographically unique, but it's very interdisciplinary. She has them looking at rare materials in the collection, papers relating to Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass, as well as going out into the community to different sites around the city, learning about their history and the texts, associated with it.
And it also, I know very little about this sort of thing, but it's an important course to discuss because it involves a lot of electronic resources, not a lot, but selected electronic resources in terms of mapping. And this is not something I know a whole heck of a lot about, but this is also an aspect of what we offer in terms of courses, in terms of we have faculty who teach and do research in digital humanities and do work on new media that involves digital technology and web technology. And that's going to be an important aspect of that particular course on Rochester, New York, I think. So that's something that's important to mention. But yeah, it's hard to identify a favorite course that I teach. I mean, I like all of them. I do teach a course on science fiction, which I have not taught in a number of years, and is on deck, let's say. So it'll be probably something I'll recommend for next academic year.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites actually might be teaching British Literature 1, which is, Beowulf through the 18th century. And I guess maybe other than my theater in London class, that's pretty, pretty darn cool. But leaving that aside, British Literature 1, just because I think there are so many. I mean, it's sort of some of the greatest texts in the English language that we get to read. We read Milton and Donne and all of these authors that I wouldn't otherwise teach, I guess, Shakespeare. And I think what I like about it too is that students are always surprised by, what we find there, and the kinds of like strangely contemporary feeling thoughts and emotions that writers are describing from hundreds of years ago, and the ways they articulate those in different forms and genres, than we would use now. So just the richness of those texts and how surprising and fresh they can be is, I think, what makes it really fun to teach.
Awesome. I personally took a couple of English courses while I was an undergrad at U of R, and I think one of my favorites was Madness, Marriage, and Monstrosity, taught by Betty London, which has a lot of Jane Austen and various other um, 19th, 18th, 19th century British literature. But it's an awesome course. You'll learn so much from it and read some really cool books as well. But we do have another question from a student. They ask, as educators and mentors, do you have suggestions for a returning adult transfer student with interest in English literature and philosophy? What do you think your department or U of R as a whole has to offer students like themselves?
I guess I would say the small size, would definitely be a plus, I think, for someone transferring and with it sounds to me like a fairly specific sense of what you want to study. And I think, because you can interact with faculty really directly in our department and courses tend to be smaller. There are a lot of ways to kind of tailor, the thinking you're doing and the writing you're doing to your interests, and to embark on independent studies or find different ways of using the various riches of the library, rare books and special collections, to do your own work. So I think I think because of those things, we're a good place for someone who has some self-direction and independence to kind of forge a path.
Yeah, certainly, the curriculum that we have that cultivates or is about research that Katie mentioned earlier. Our research advanced seminars as well as the honors seminars really require students to engage in independent research. And so, that kind of quality that a student, kind of self-starting quality that a student brings will be a definite asset in those types of courses. The only other thing I would say in addition to what Katie said is that, I've taught a number, like numerous transfer students in my time at U of R of various ages and different years, and they've all sort of uniformly been excellent students. So, I think transfer students of all sorts can come to the University of Rochester and succeed.
Yeah, I think that you both made some excellent points about that. I think that the department size and the fact that your classes are so much more personalized than taking classes maybe in like a natural science realm or a social science realm might be, or even English at other universities too. I think that that's hugely beneficial for our students. We do have another question kind of about the intersections of English and music, considering how strong the Eastman School of Music is, and branching off of our earlier conversation about how the English department intersects with other subjects. Is there a course or event of some sort in the English department that involves music or studying lyric and song?
Well, that sounds so. I'm trying to think.
I have a couple examples that I could bring in. I mean, so for one, both of these are related to Emily Dickinson, somewhat oddly, because they took place some years apart, but a number of years ago now, I guess. But I think it says something about our relationship with Eastman and kind of the ability to kind of move back and forth between them. we had an event where the poems of Emily Dickinson that have been set to music were performed at Eastman by Eastman students, and then U of R faculty from English talked about the poems. I think it was a multi-day event. Faculty from English talked about the poems, and then faculty at Eastman discussed also kind of the details of how they were set to music and, you know, the dynamic of that. And then there were, I think, 2 Eastman composition students who wrote songs to accompany, or they put poems by our English faculty, our poets, so James Langenbach and Jennifer Groth, to music. And then those were sung by Eastman students. So it was a whole kind of weekend, I guess, of events exploring song and poetry, kind of through the lens of Dickinson, whose poems have been set to music multiple times. I've had a number of Eastman students over the years who have kind of essentially double majored. And I think that's not uncommon. And I think English, you know, tends to be a good landing place for those students for a number of reasons. So I had one student who also came to my theater in London course, and you know, you can imagine how, you know, kind of insights into music in theater would be really enriching, and to kind of then, you know, combine that with interpretation of obviously the language of the play and every other aspect. And so, you know, in any of our theater courses in particular, there's a lot of kind of nexus there. That student then went on to do an honors thesis in the literature track on Emily Dickinson, and specifically looked at Aaron Copland's settings of her verse to music, which was outstanding. It was really, really great thesis, and she ended up presenting it publicly at an undergraduate research forum and won an award. So I was really proud of that. And then I've had other students over the years who have been Eastman students, or, I mean, obviously you can also major in music as a River Campus, you know, student, or, you know, double major in music and English. I've had a number of students over the years who have, you know, had a foot in both. And I mean, this is, I guess, kind of anecdotal, but I've found those students to have such a good ear for rhythm and meter in both in their reading and also in their writing. Some of those students are the best writers. They have an ear for the sound of language and syllabification and all of that. So, so I think there's a lot of interesting kind of overlap there.
Yeah, along the lines of thinking about honors seminars, or rather honors theses that I've worked with. I've worked with students who've done theses that incorporate music and literature, or look at music as literature. I directed an honors thesis on the lyrics of Beatles songs by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and so that was a really special project to be a part of. I don't teach courses on music as literature, or you know, making that connection in any sort of well, actually, not. I don't have any courses on music, but I do. Most of the courses I teach are in African American studies, and you know, I teach African American drama and you know, fiction, of course, on the Harlem Renaissance and autobiography. And if you're studying African American culture, it's important to understand African American musical traditions as well, which often have both formal as well as thematic connections to the tradition of African American literature. So I'm always bringing my iPod into class, because we're frequently talking about the structure and the themes, for example, of the blues. Or when I'm teaching my Harlem Renaissance class, we often read a good deal of jazz poetry. When I teach my course on slavery and the 20th century African American novel, we spend a good amount of time on spirituals. And hip hop is another Black musical tradition that has had an impact on African American literature in recent years. So that it's sort of an inescapable feature of teaching African American literature that music finds its way into the classroom eventually.
Kind of related to your note about the Beatles, we do have a Beatles expert in our music department. John Kovach teaches a course on the Beatles that's apparently really awesome. I never had the chance to take it, but I've heard wonderful things.
John Kovach literally wrote the book on the history of rock and roll. So yeah, definitely quite knowledgeable on that subject.
We do have another question in the Q&A. This is a bit more specific to creative writing. So within the creative writing course, what is the coursework like? Is it more project and independent study based, or is there more of the learning techniques feel to it? And if there are projects, what are some to anticipate and look forward to?
Yeah, so our creative writing track does have a literature requirement. So you take literature classes in which you read literature. But yeah, I would say the core of it is of the creative writing part of it is the workshop model, where students are writing and then and reading, writing their own work, reading each other's work, and workshopping that together with the professor each week. And we have courses in screenwriting, fiction writing, poetry writing, humor writing,
Speculative fiction.
Yep, speculative fiction. So lots of different, workshop possibilities, and then there are different levels of those too. There's intro and advanced. And yeah, then a student who wanted to do the honors track in creative writing would, in their senior year, write a longer creative piece, whether a collection of poems or a work of fiction, either longer work of fiction or a couple of interrelated stories. So I think those are usually, I want to say, around 50 pages long. So that's definitely, I think that would fall under the category of something to look forward to. That's something that a lot of students, come knowing that they want to do, a challenge that they want to take on, and I think kind of build toward it in their writing, workshops, and in their reading. That's something really special to look forward to in your senior year if you want to opt for that track.
Awesome. So I have a couple more questions for you. What can students who study English during their undergraduate years do in terms of career after they graduate?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, there are, there are some traditional kinds of career paths in terms of, graduate school, law school. But we've had graduates go on to careers in a variety of directions: business, social services, public relations, publishing, and notably, and I think we still have this up on our website, the English Department website. A few years ago, our colleague Ken Gross reached out to alumni, U of R alumni who majored in English from across the years, and just to check in to see what they were doing. And we heard back from people doing who have established careers in all sorts of you know we had like a psychotherapist, high school and college educators, business people, lawyers, filmmakers, a former U.S. ambassador to Libya. I mean, just it was just all over the place, which is great, and it just kind of reinforces the point that it's almost as if there's nothing you cannot do with a background in the study of literature. Again, for the reasons that we mentioned, the study of literature not only cultivates writing skills and reading skills, language skills, communication skills, but also critical thinking skills, which are vital. I mentioned this before, I think, but I recently, I think it was in September actually, I heard from a student who graduated this spring who double majored in biology and English, and is applying to medical school, and was telling me that she was particularly interested in sort of addressing underserved communities when it comes to medicine. And she thought about that from taking, some of the courses that I was teaching. And she was saying that she was actually going to submit as a writing sample to medical school something that she had written for one of my literature courses, which sounds kind of cool. Also, I mean, it's just really interesting that's not something that I had ever anticipated, but I could totally see where she was coming from. I could totally see how her study of literature courses was informing her interests as someone who's applying to medical school. So, yeah, all sorts of things are possible, I think.
Okay. So my last question is, what do you think makes the English department at Rochester stand out compared to other institutions?
Well, I guess I would say um, its size, and so we've emphasized that a couple of different times. But I think it's important to kind of place Rochester in the context of our peer institutions. We are kind of in between we are a major research institution, major research university, right, with all of the resources that brings with it, right? Big, working labs with big grants in the sciences, a major research library with all of the resources that come with that, all of the databases, all of the books, all of the subscriptions, the rare books, the special collections, the visitors we've mentioned, right, who come through. This is the kind of lively, atmosphere where you've got working researchers, visiting researchers coming through, doing, making serious contributions to their fields, to the conversations in these areas now. We have graduate students doing their work, right? So it's this very lively intellectual atmosphere that's created by the fact of our being a major research university. On the other hand, we are fairly small. When you look at the size of other major research universities, we are one of the smallest. And so we combine all of those resources with what is the feel of a liberal arts college, right? So small, personalized classes, a lot of interaction with faculty, a lot of opportunity to meet these distinguished visitors who are coming through. You're not just sitting in a giant lecture hall, watching this person give her lecture and then fly out the next day. You're really, you can have lunch with her, she could visit your class. So, you know, the personal interactions and personal attention that you would get at a small liberal arts college, but also the resources and the excitement, you know, of cutting edge research and dialogue, and resources, you know, that the major research institution brings with it.
Yeah, and just to underscore what Katie said, I mean, uh, the faculty of the English department are also, we're not only instructors, we are researchers, and we are involved in the production and dissemination of knowledge, of cutting edge research, if I can say that, you know, to toot our own collective horn. You know, so it means something when a student can take a course from a professor who is a known quantity in terms of being a researcher in their field. And I would also say that, you know, I think our department has had a well-deserved reputation in some specific fields like Renaissance literature and medieval literature. You know, I think we have had for a long time just excellent scholars amongst the faculty in those particular fields. Um, so you know, I think that's something, you know, that people should know about. That you know, we have accomplished, even renowned scholars on our faculty, and if you're an undergraduate student, you get to take courses from those people. Those are your instructors in the classroom, you know, that's meaningful. So
Yeah, and also that some of that is captured on our website. If you go to research on the top bar and click on it, you'll see some of the books that our faculty have published, on all sorts of, you know, subfields of English literature. So that'll, you know, give you some taste, of the kinds of books, that we're publishing, and the kinds of questions that we're researching.
Well, thank you both. I know we're a little bit over time, so I'll wrap this up quickly. But thank you to all of our attendees who joined us here live today, and thank you to those who will be watching this later on. I'm going to post my email address in the chat box, so if you do have any questions about English or the humanities in general, you can reach out to me and I can answer them or direct you to the appropriate resources. But thank you to our wonderful panelists, Jeff and Katie. Unfortunately, Nigel wasn't able to make it, but there will be, I'll be hosting a panel on the arts sometime in the near future where we will hopefully get to experience Nigel's presence. He is truly a phenomenal character who does a lot for our theater program. But thank you all. If you're watching this later, my email address can be found on our admissions website, as I know my name is a little bit difficult to spell and pronounce. But stay safe, everyone.
all right, thanks very much.